Welcome to the Online Success Journey Podcast, your opportunity to discover and learn from entrepreneurs like yourself. This is not your typical podcast, but a place where you can get the real story and find out how real people encounter speed bumps and detours, but journey through to find success. Now here's your host for the Online Success Journey Podcast, Patience.
Hello everyone and welcome to Online Success Journey. This is episode 92. Are you ready to join the clan? Today we have Dr. Hans Finzel, a successful author, speaker, and a trusted authority in the field of leadership. Hello, Dr. Hans.
Hello, Patience. Good to be with you on your show today.
Hello, I know the clan is anxious to hear your story, so let's get started with the basics. Can you tell my clan a little bit about your background, about what you did before you started your own online business? Take us right up to the last job or business before you are ever online.
Well, my career was mostly in the nonprofit world, and I lived with my wife in Vienna, Austria for 10 years, had a wonderful experience there at the beginning of my career. I've always been in training, leadership training, and then I was a CEO for 20 years of an international nonprofit called WorldVenture, which worked in 65 different countries. So I did that for 20 years, got to travel to over 100 countries and see a lot of interesting places, meet a lot of great people. Through these years, I grew just fascinated with the topic of leadership. During my career as a CEO, I became more and more interested in leadership because I saw a lot of bad leadership actually in the business world and in the education, political, religious. So I started studying leadership. I got my doctorate in the field, and then I started writing on leadership. So about 4 years ago, I completed my main career, and now I'm full-time started my own online business. And my full-time pursuit now is to write and speak on leadership, all things leadership, trying to help good leaders become great leaders. That's my passion.
Wow. Why do you care so much about leaders and leadership?
Well, because leaders make things happen. And everybody listening to your podcast, you're either a leader or you're following a leader. And by the way, I define leadership as the word influence. So anytime you are influencing anyone else, you are leading them. And I just find that a lot of people work in tough jobs that they're not very happy because they have bad leaders above them that they don't respect. And so my passion is to help the world have more great leaders in all avenues of life.
Wow. Why do you do what you do?
Because the world needs more leaders, especially in the nonprofit sector where I worked, where we were helping the poor, helping the people that are less fortunate. Even in the nonprofit world, there is a tremendous need for more leadership. So if leaders are more effective, then the organizations that they run are going to reach their goals and aspirations. I find a lot of companies and nonprofits that have tremendous aspirations and goals and desires, but they often don't fulfill those goals because of poor leadership. So that's why I do what I do, so that they can be more successful.
Can anyone be a leader, or are some people more cut out for it than others?
It's a good question, Patience. Some people ask me the question, are leaders born or are they made? And the answer is really yes, it's both. There's no question that some people are born with leadership charisma, leadership personality. When I was a little boy, I was always the leader of my neighborhood gang, or I had a rock and roll band, or I was a Boy Scout, or whatever I did even as a young man. It seems like I was a leader. But I don't think that's the most important thing. I think anybody can learn to be a good leader. So it's not so much your natural gifts and talents and charisma and personality. It's more what you learn.
Are you sure? Because some of the leaders, they tend to be different than others. So I thought maybe you are born with it. It's not something
Nope.
you can just learn for overnight and get good at it.
Well,
Wow.
not overnight, but you can learn to be a great leader. Because remember, it's just influence. And if you learn, you can learn to be a great leader, even if you don't feel you were born to be one. So it's not a good perspective to think either you're born a leader or you're not. It's really something we can all learn. And I have 4 children, and my youngest son, you would probably say he doesn't have any natural leadership abilities or gifts, but he's stepped up into quite a few leadership situations, and he always tells me, Dad, it's not like I wanted to be the leader, but nobody's willing to do it, so I have to step up. And that's, to me, great leadership. When you fill a vacuum, you fill a need because nobody else is willing to do it. So that many people get into leadership in that way.
Wow. I know you work in a non-profit companies and you help people to become great leaders. But have you ever had mentors or coaching to help you out, develop your own skills?
Oh, yes. I'm a big believer in mentors. In fact, I have a podcast on my website. My website is hansfinzel.com, and I have 75 podcasts, and I have a couple that I've done on the mentors of my life. So, yes, I'm a huge believer in mentoring, and I'm the product of people who believed in me and invested in me. That's what mentoring is. It's not always so formal. I never had anybody say to me, Hans, I want to mentor you. And I don't think I ever ask anybody, will you mentor me? To me, mentoring is more organic. It just happens. And as you look back, you realize, wow, that person invested in my life. So I am the product of a number of men and women who believed in me and helped me in my journey. So that's what I call mentoring, and I'm a big, big believer in mentoring. And now I have the chance, as an older man, to mentor young men and women, and I love that.
What is the most valuable thing your mentors has told you or you learned from them?
Wow, that's a big question. What's the most important thing? Probably to believe in myself. Sometimes I struggle with self-confidence, and a lot of people struggle with self-confidence and belief in themselves. And probably the biggest thing that they communicated to me is they believed in me. They had confidence in me. They saw the potential in me, and it helped me to see the same things in myself that they saw in me. So I would say that's the biggest contribution they made.
What is the most valuable thing you have ever given away?
Oh, my time. The most valuable thing that I ever give away is my time, because we all have the same amount of time, and time is probably our most precious resource. So I would say when I give people my time, that's how I would answer your question.
Wow. Let's talk about your new book, The Top 10 Ways to Be a Great Leader. Why is this book? Why now?
Yeah, Top 10 Ways to Be a Great Leader. And you might listen to that title and think to yourself, well, is that arrogant? Am I saying I'm a great leader? No, I'm not saying I'm a great leader. I'm saying, why now did I write this book? This is my 10th book, by the way, and most of my books are on leadership. And now I'm in my 60s, so I've been around a while, and I would say I have packed this book full of wisdom of 30 years of experience being a leader, being a CEO, being a boss, and observing a lot of other leaders and studying leadership. So after all these years, I thought, what are the most important, essential skills every new leader especially should master, pay attention to? I decided when I wrote the book, the word leadership actually has 10 letters in it, the word leadership. And so what I did is I came up with a principle for each of the 10 letters in the word leadership, and that's the outline of the book, the 10 chapters follow the 10 letters of the word leadership. So to me, it's a culmination of a lifetime of being a leader and studying leadership and being passionate about this topic.
How can we use this book to get the really goodness out of it? How can we read it? Should we read it chapter by chapter from front to the end cover? How can someone really get it really quickly and start using it from today?
Well, yes, of course. Reading it from the front to the back, yes, would be a great idea. You know, the best way would be if you could get a group of people that are all interested in leadership. Maybe it's your team that you work with. Maybe it's friends. You want to have a book club and read over lunchtime. But at the end of every chapter, if you noticed, I have some questions for discussion. I'm real big on application. And so the ideal thing would be to get a group together to read the book and then discuss the questions at the end of every chapter. Because that way you're not just getting ideas in your head, but you're applying it to your situation. I think that would be the best way. Read it as a group book study.
Wow. What makes a great leader great and what makes a leader not great?
Well, what makes a great leader great is someone who has a positive impact on the people around them. A leader that's not so great would have a negative impact on people. That's pretty plain and simple. If you're a great leader, people respect you, people trust you, and they follow you because they respect you and they want to follow you. Bad leaders are often leaders you have to follow, even though you don't want to and you don't respect them. So great leaders have a tremendously positive impact on the people around them.
What has been one of your greatest leadership failures?
Probably one of my greatest leadership failures I talk about in the last chapter of the book. The P in leadership stands for the power of humility. And I think for me, I struggle with really caring about the people that work for me or under me. And when I was in my 30s, after I got my master's degree, I had my first job and I was arrogant and I was self-centered and I just worked hard, but my team kind of revolted against me and they said, Hans, we don't respect your leadership. And it really hurt my feelings and it crushed me. And I tell the story in the last chapter. And I said, why? And they said, well, you don't care about us. You just care about yourself and your goals. And you're really smart and you work very hard and you're really good at what you do, but you don't care about your team. That was probably the greatest early failure in my career. Can I tell you one more?
Yes, please.
So when you are the boss or a leader and you have to hire people and fire people, and one of the biggest jobs, the most important responsibilities in leadership is recruiting the right people to join your team. And it's not a perfect science. And I made some big mistakes where I hired the wrong people. Well, some of my greatest failures is, I'm a really nice person and I hate to fire people. I don't like conflict. I'm a conflict avoider. And firing somebody is a big conflict situation. And so I would put off firing and letting go of somebody that was being destructive to the organization. And that was a failure on my part to avoid the conflict and to put off a decision that really needed to be made. That was another one of the big failures in my career that I regret. And I always say, if you feel pretty strongly that the person needs to go, the faster you make the decision, the better. So that's a couple of answers for your question.
How did you get over it? How did you overcome those failures as time went on?
Well, the R in leadership stands for resilience. And resilience is the ability to bounce back. It's what I call sponginess. And I learned to be a soft sponge. And when I fell down, I got back up. So you have to learn as a leader, you will have disappointments. You will have heartaches. People will disappoint you. People will turn against you. And you just have to move on. And when you fall down in the dirt and you're all discouraged and you're bruised, you get back up, you dust yourself off, you put bandages on your wounds, and you keep moving forward. And you learn from your mistakes. That's what I did. I learned from our mistakes. So later in my career, I learned to be more careful about, for example, who I hired. I heard somebody say years ago, the best time to fire a person is before you hire them. So in other words, if you make the right decision and get the right person to begin with, you won't have to be figuring out how to let them go 6 months or a year later.
Wow. Okay. If you are going to advise young generation or someone who really interested in being a leader, but they don't know where to start, what is your top 2 tips you can give them?
Okay, how to get into, well, tip number 1 is get my books on leadership. They're the best.
Oh, yes.
Because seriously, the first tip is to study leadership and read good books on leadership. Don't assume you know what you're doing. And one of the things I've observed is we tend to lead as we were led. And if you had bad leaders in your past, that you might replicate their bad example and their bad habits. So number 1, read good books on leadership. And that would include listening to podcasts and seminars. And the second thing is to find a mentor, find a leadership mentor. If it's at all possible, if there's somebody in your world, no matter what field of leadership they're in, if you could ask them, hey, would you mind meeting with me every once in a while and giving me some tips on how I can be an effective leader? And let me tell you some of the things I'm going through, and you can give me some advice. So those would be my 2 top tips. Read good books and get a mentor.
Wow. Have you noticed anything recently that is becoming like a trend of leaders?
Well, one trend that I talk about in my book, the E in leadership, stands for emotional intelligence. And are you familiar with the whole field of emotional intelligence?
If you don't mind, if you can just expand on it, that would be nice.
Yeah, well, emotional intelligence, we all know what IQ is. IQ is your intellectual quotient, how smart you are. And EQ is your emotional intelligence. And that has to do with what I call the soft skills of leadership. And I think one of the big trends we're seeing today in the field of leadership is we're paying a lot more attention to EQ. EQ is about people skills. How well do you work with people? What are your relationship skills like? How are you with conflict resolution? How are you in crisis? Do you explode, or are you able to handle crisis and stress? So these are all the soft things about leadership. They're not how smart you are. And they're not how gifted that you are. They're how you relate to other people. So today, we recognize that leadership effectiveness has more to do with EQ than IQ. And when I hire people, when I have references that I check on people I might be hiring, the number 1 question I ask is, how are they at working with people? Tell me about their people skills. How are they relationally? I don't care how smart they are. I care how good they work with people. And I have a mantra that I practice when I hire people: hire for attitude, train for skill. You can't change a bad attitude. And to me, attitude is everything. And that's part of having a good EQ. So now I've given you a little lesson on emotional intelligence. And the E in leadership in my book, that whole chapter, is about emotional intelligence. And I have a free test in that chapter that you can take. It's kind of an EQ test to see sort of how you stack up in the whole field of emotional intelligence.
Wow. Okay. Where do we find this book and or your other books on leadership?
Well, Amazon.com is probably the easiest place to find them. I know you're in Great Britain and the UK, and so yes, Amazon.com. You just type in my name, Hans Finzel, H-A-N-S, Finzel, F like Frank, I-N-Z like zebra, E-L. If you just type my name into Amazon, you'll find all my books. And this newest one, Top 10 Ways to Be a Great Leader, is the one that's got a red cover. The other, my bestseller, is the Top 10 Mistakes Leaders Make. And that one's been around quite a while, but that's a great book on leadership, and it's got a blue cover. So they're all available on Amazon.
And if someone wants to get in contact with you or have a question to ask you, where can we find you?
Yeah, on my website, hansfinzel.com. If you can spell my name, you can find me. So, yeah, just hansfinzel.com, and I have a contact tab on there. You can write me if you have a question. It's got my podcasts on it, my books, a lot of my leadership talks, and I read all my own emails. So if you write me, I will read it, and I will respond to you.
Right. Oh, do you still take on one-to-one coaching, or you don't do that nowadays?
I do.
What do you do?
Yeah, I do. I do some one-on-one coaching of executive leaders. Absolutely.
What type of people do you take on one-on-one coaching?
Usually leaders who are in the higher levels of their organization. They don't have to be the top leader, although I often mentor the top leaders. Just some people who sense a need and feel they need an outside voice, somebody they can talk to about developing their leadership skills, and somebody that they can talk to confidentially about some of the problems they're having in their with their leadership team. So I've mentored a number of different kinds of leaders in their leadership. And again, it's something you can do electronically. You don't have to be physically in around anymore. I use Zoom as a video conferencing technology, and that way you can actually see each other face to face, and it really works great.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. So, Clan, there will be more from Dr. Hans in a moment. If you are finding Dr. Hans' journey interesting and you are ready to hear more, come and listen to the full version of the interview at onlinesuccessjourney.com. If you are on Online Journey Success already, click on part 2 of Dr. Hans' journey and you'll get more tips to help you with your own leadership or the company you work for leadership. And don't forget, you can also access all other online success interview podcasts on the site as well. So that's a wrap, Clan. Remember, success is a journey. Patience and Dr. Han.
This is not the end of the journey. We hope you've enjoyed listening to part 1 and want to be sure you know there is a second part to this and every journey podcast at onlinesuccessjourney.com, filled with even more success tips, uplifting stories, and even a bit of fun. There are dozens of episodes only available to the members of the Online Success Journey clan. Check out the website and click on Join the Clan for more information. Patience would like to thank you for listening to this podcast, and she has a free audio gift for you at her website. Go to onlinesuccessjourney.com for instant access to this gift. Of course, you know that listening to the journeys of others helps each of us chart our own path. So make sure you're subscribed to be notified as each new interview is posted. There are so many ways to stay connected to the Online Success Journey and to listen in. And if you're enjoying the podcast, we appreciate your help in telling others. One of the best ways to share the benefit you get is to rate and review it at Stitcher and other sites by clicking the stars or completing the ratings form, by clicking thumbs up and leaving a comment on YouTube, or liking and sharing the podcast on social media. To review the podcast within iTunes, simply open iTunes to the podcast, click on Ratings and Reviews, then write a review. On behalf of Patience, and until next time, thanks once more for listening. It is our hope that this podcast will guide you on your own online success journey.